Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. I'm Surya Gangadharan. You're on our show Books Corner, and I have with me Chander Suta Dogra. She's a well-known writer and journalist, and she's come out recently with a book detailing the tragic situation concerning Indian POWs who have been held in Pakistan for many years, and there seems to be little light at the end of the tunnel. We're not even clear how many are alive, where they are, what their situation is. How do you explain this? I mean, so many years, no action taken. Although there seems to be have been visits back and forth between the two countries, but nothing ever turns up. How do you explain this?
Yeah, actually, there are two, three main reasons why this matter has been somehow mishandled, sometimes deliberately, sometimes inadvertently. If we go back to 1972, when the negotiations for POWs were taking place between India and Pakistan, we had there 92,700 odd, which is rounded off to generally 93,000 POWs from the Eastern Front. However, from the Western Front, we had about 545 Pakistani POWs. And what Pakistan declared at that time was that they had 616 of the Indian POWs. This was the declared number. Although even at that time, the Red Cross had put this figure at 635. So there was a gap of around 19 odd names. And, if we look at what happened in 1972, there was a Shimla Agreement. And even post that, the paramount, the issue of paramount importance for India at that time was the recognition of Bangladesh by the international community and by Pakistan, and the freedom of the release of Mujibur Rahman, whom India wanted desperately should go back to Bangladesh and take his place as the leader of the newly liberated country. So these were the issues of paramount importance, and the issue of our POWs actually was a very low priority issue, which because of which India really didn't verify or ascertain whether Pakistan actually sent back all of ours. Then what happened? Later, even after there was evidence which came in the following years that some letters had come, some sightings were there from returning prisoners, and there was a fair amount of evidence that Pakistan has indeed kept back some of ours. And if I explain to you why India believes that some of our prisoners, some of our POWs were kept back, they were kept back as this is one of the theories which the Indian government also believes, is that they were kept back as bargaining chips to be bargained for in exchange in case we had handed over 195 of their Pakistani officers who were with us. Bangladesh wanted to try them for war crimes. And India, public opinion in India was also in favor of them being tried. And Pakistan was desperate to avoid that because it had already had a humiliating defeat. And to have its senior officers being tried for war crimes would have been the ultimate humiliation for them. So Pakistan was desperate. It's another matter that later on, by the end of 1973, 1974, negotiations with India took off in a positive direction, and all the Pakistani POWs were sent back, including the 195 who were wanted. There was a list of those 195. They were mostly Pakistani army officers, and even those were handed back. So the so our POWs who were kept as bargaining chips in case this repatriation did not happen, they lost their significance and just kind of remained in captivity. And later on, even when India began asking, when we got evidence and we began asking that, look, you please return our prisoners, by that time it is believed that some of them had been physically tortured and were in such a poor physical and mental condition that it would have been an embarrassment for Pakistan to even admit that it had these prisoners. Some of them, they had retained some of them. It would have been extremely embarrassing internationally that they violated the Geneva Conventions and all this. Now, there is another very very key issue over here, that yes, you're right that India did do a lot of back and forth with Pakistan right up to the 80s to get these prisoners back. There were a lot of high level meetings at the topmost level of the government with prime ministers, foreign secretaries. But why did we not get any success? For the simple reason that whenever you want your prisoners back, there has to be a reciprocal arrangement.
Yeah.
You have to be prepared to swap. And here, I mean, this is something which nobody really talks much about in India, that if you want to address the matter of our POWs, you have to address the question of whether India has also held back some Pakistani POWs
Hmm.
from 1971 and 65 wars. And there is evidence in my book that possibly it has. I have given 18 names of those who are believed to be in Indian jails.
Are the Pakistanis as insistent as we have been about getting these people back? I don't hear much. You don't see many reports about that.
Yes, you're right. Absolutely. Pakistan has never really made as much noise or taken it up as vigorously as India has. There are several indications why it hasn't done it. I've produced some of them in my book. Their senior leaders have been saying throughout that we have explained to our families that India denies having them, and हमारे लिए वो शहीद हो गए हैं तो आप भी मान लीजिए. Now Pakistan actually doesn't want these people back because Pakistan is paranoid about the idea that their army people who have spent a certain amount of time in India would possibly be brainwashed and sent back as soldiers with changed loyalties. This is a persistent fear, which we can see from 1972 onwards. It's quite, there's plenty of evidence. So Pakistan actually doesn't want them, and because there was a military rule in Pakistan for so many years, it was successful in suppressing the voices of the families who actually did have some evidence here and there. Whatever they had, Pakistan actually didn't permit them to raise their voice. And it is only in 2010, it's surprising, so many decades after the 71 war, it is only in 2010 when some democratic forces began to get stronger in Pakistan, people began raising their voices. So the Pak foreign minister produced a list of 18 and said for the first time in the Senate, their upper house, that yes, India does indeed have 18 of our army men as prisoners.
So that admission, first time after so many years, did they
Yeah.
indicate any details about where they were being held? What is their situation? Were they all alive?
It's not clear really. We just have this list which has been reproduced once or twice, and since India also denies holding them, so we really don't know where or what. Uh, it's interesting. In the epilogue of my book, I have given the account of one Pakistani soldier who was kept from 1965 during Operation Gibraltar. He was held, he had come as a saboteur. He was from the Azad Kashmir Regiment, Sipai Maqbool Hussain. And he was held as a spy oblique security prisoner, which actually is a euphemism for spies. And India also believes that a lot of our missing people have been held by Pakistan not under the category of POWs, but as spies. And they call them security prisoners, which is a technical. And India also, does something very similar. So this person was held back, and it is only in 2005, that is almost 40 years after the 65 war ended. This person was sent back along with a whole batch of others, fishermen and many others. There was some kind of a peace deal, and whenever there is some goodwill gesture, prisoners are exchanged. And this is how he reached. He reached Lahore with a severed tongue. He could not even speak. It is only that he kept writing his number on the palm of his hand. So some of the people over there figured out that possibly he has something to do with the army, and one thing led to another. And finally, when Pakistan identified him as Sipai Maqbool Hussain, who was missing, who was actually, in their records, he was shown as killed in action during Operation Gibraltar. They gave him the third highest gallantry award, which is equivalent to our Veer Chakra. And when he died in 2018, the Pakistan Army chief attended his funeral. So he is
So,
one example that yes, there are prisoners on this side and on the other side, who we just don't know. I mean, this was pure luck that he came up. Otherwise, he could have also, you know, fallen through the cracks like the others have.
Mm. Some of these NGOs in Pakistan, have tried to get prisoners who have completed their terms returned to India. Have they been of much help in this regard?
On the other side, it's not very clear, I mean, how many of them, but the prisoners who have come, especially intelligence agents, spies, particularly from the border areas, Jammu, Punjab, Rajasthan, like a lot of those villages, many people opt for the business of espionage, whether for different agencies. And some of these people, when they are sentenced, they spend a certain length of time in Pakistani prisons and they come back. So many of them, especially in the 80s, have brought evidence about some of our missing soldiers. And this evidence has been produced before Pakistan several times. This is part of the official evidence which is produced in bilateral meetings between India and Pakistan. And that is how there are several soldiers. For instance, there is Gunner Surjant Singh, again of 65 war, and he was shown as killed in action. It was only when two returning spies brought news that he is serving time in Pakistani prisons that his category in India was changed from killed in action to missing in action. So similarly, there are other cases also.
So now so many years, 45, 50 years now, I'm sure most of them are possibly no more. Does it surprise you that across the political spectrum in India, they seem to be little interest really in pursuing this, bring it to a conclusion.
Yes, you're very right. In India, the general thinking within the government is that well, it's just a matter of time, and once they die, their normal lifespan, the matter will die a natural death, and that's it. Now, however, this is not how the matter of soldiers is treated. Whether it is the army or the defense ministry or the government, you have to account for every soldier. All
Agree.
all self-respecting armies across the world. Look at the US. Till today, they are searching for their soldiers
Absolutely.
from World War II, their bodies, their remains, whatever little they can find. The
Yeah.
DNA being tested in their laboratory in Honolulu, and India is also facilitating US, Bangladesh to search for the remains of their soldiers. So even if the person is dead, we still need to know how he died. Did he die
Yeah.
in captivity, lost in some prison cell somewhere, or did he actually die in action and it was a mistake that his name is on the missing list, or how? So you have to account for every soldier. And this argument that, oh well, they would have died by now, they're in their 70s or 80s, and so is it really worth even finding out, or even worth searching for them or taking it up with Pakistan? This actually doesn't mean anything, because it doesn't absolve the government of the responsibility to account for every soldier who's
And
missing.
how's the armed forces reacting to it? Do they privately tell you that they don't like how the government stand has been?
The armed forces are, of course, there's a lot of pain. There is they do feel for their missing comrades. And in fact, I mean, you might be aware that in the NDA, in the cadets mess, right outside that, there is the missing man table.
Yeah.
Every day that table is laid just in memory of the missing soldiers, so that the cadets who pass in and out of the doors of the mess every day are at least reminded that yes, this, I mean, we've lost some of our people. However, I'll take you back again to 72, 73, 74, and how the army handled this whole issue. Now, one of the reasons why the army also forgot them and moved on is that we don't have a missing in action category for administrative purposes. So,
I
in order
see.
to release, yeah, we don't have. Now, in order to release pensionary benefits and other benefits, it became necessary to classify these missing people as killed in action in order to, give the families the whatever benefits, pension, etc., etc. Now, it was very painful for those families to accept and sign that certificate, death certificates had to be issued. Only then could the pension be released. So it was actually a technicality because of which they were categorized as killed in action, whereas they were actually missing in action. Hmm? However, as the years passed, in regiments, in the unit motivational centers, wherever, even in the martyrs memorials, which are there all over the country, their names began to appear in the list of the dead. And as officers retired, newer people came, everyone believed that yes, they are killed in action. So in the records of the units and the squadrons, these people are listed as killed in action because of a mere technicality. But that technicality, everyone has forgotten that it was a technicality. It's been taken as a truth, and the army and the forces have also moved on. It's very unfortunate that this is how it's happened.
Last question, Chander. You've been writing on this for a very long time. I recall many of your earlier columns. I mean, how do you look back on all this when you see this? You also come from a military family. What is, at the end of the day, what is your sense? How do you feel?
Well, it is a very painful chapter in our military history. There's no doubt about it. Uh, of course, the governments have not been very forthcoming, have not been very proactive. One of the reasons is also that many of our politicians, most of them, in fact, their children are never sent to the defense, so they
Yeah,
can never really feel, they can never really empathize with
yeah,
what an army family or an air force or a defense family is going through. This is one of the major reasons. Unlike what you see in the US or the UK, where their top political leadership, most of them are war veterans.
true.
So they can understand that what a family goes through when somebody is missing in action. And so, which is why you find that those militaries, they are still searching for their missing soldiers. Whereas here, we don't have that culture. We just don't have that culture. It's very sad. And I mean, one of the reasons why I wrote this book, well, I was fortunate. My dad fought the 71 war, and we were lucky that he came back to raise us. But there were so many others who didn't come back. And when I got in touch with these families, because I used to do stories about these people off and on, and it is very painful to see their condition. Entire families have been destroyed, traumatized by this. Parents have died in agony. Some people have lost their mental balance. Children have committed suicide of those who've gone missing. There are those kind of cases. And uh, and and, and you can imagine that initially, when they were forced to sign killed in action, that our relatives are dead, and accept that yes, they won't come back. Suddenly in 1979, the government came out with a list of missing, that oh, so many of our 40, at that time the list was just 40 of them. So these people got a huge jolt because they had resigned themselves to the thought that, well, yes, our people have died in action. And then when the government came out with this list of missing soldiers, it revived hopes, and again created so much uncertainty in their lives. And then over the next few years, they found discussions, negotiations with Pakistan not going anywhere, and the names of their loved ones are appearing in martyrs memorials, yeah,
Mhm.
across the country, in units here, there, everywhere. So it was very, very painful until today. This fact distresses them, and they are still trying to take up with the government that please do not put their names on martyrs memorials. They should be taken as being on duty. And I mean, I can also tell you that in 2011, it was the Gujarat High Court which finally told the government that, look, you have to stop, correct this absurdity, that on one hand you're telling everyone, tabling a list of missing people in parliament, you're saying these are missing, and on the other hand you're treating them as being killed in action, whereas logically you should treat them as being on duty.
Yeah.
So it's only after that judgment that the government actually corrected their mistake, and now these people are shown as being on duty. They were given areas of salaries up to their normal age of retirement. They were even given time scale promotions. So somebody who was a flight lieutenant at that time retired notionally as a wing commander. Similarly, somebody who was a major or a captain, or who was a havildar retired as a honorary subedar major, or similarly, it went up. But it took the courts to tell the government that this is so absurd. that in your records they are killed in action, whereas you're telling the rest of the world that our soldiers are missing and are in captivity in Pakistan. So this is the kind of confusion, the carelessness, lack of empathy with which the matter has been handled throughout the decades.
Chandra, I hope your book does something in terms of getting some new thinking on this code and pushes our government to do something far more than they've done so far. Thank you very much. It was lovely talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.